Welcome fans to the Level 30 Games. Tom and I, have decided to create a little segment on current gen games that bring back a lot of nostalgia. And in that, we're going to call it Memory Card, where the two of us, sometimes Dan, sometimes Joe, will join us, and we'll draw the lines between nostalgia and influence and tropes and parallels of what is going on in the gaming industry. So, for today, first off, as Tom does, introduce Tom. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing not great actually, but we'll say I'm doing good.
Well, hopefully our first trial of this will work pretty well. So the goal again is to instill all of the gaming experience that both of us have had over the years, and where these current games are drawing from previously. So we're going to have two memory card slots, just like our old PS2 back in the day, where we only had so much memory to save our games and have to, every once in a while, delete some of what we talked about prior so that we can move on to some newer topics. This week I want to talk about, or this month, I want to talk about Donkey Kong Bonanza, which I'm sure we want to revisit from this past summer, where Tom and I both were in Japan when it was released, but we didn't get to play it till we got back. And then I also want to talk a little bit about Trails in the Sky, which is my first installment in the series, which I've wanted for a long time. And I don't know why it hasn't fallen in my lap as much as it has for you, Tom.
Maybe because it's a series that spans like 14 games over, 20 some years. And I think the total count that I saw today was, hey, if you want to get caught up on the Trail series, you only need to play 710 hours of JRPG goodness to be up to speed, because the series is not done technically. So I think the creator said that with the latest release in the series, they're at around 80 to 90% complete with the arc that they have been working on since 19 I don't know,
early
2006 I think it was.
Early.
Yeah, well, so I don't know if you want to wait until we get to slot 2, but yeah, it's like a spinoff of a spinoff. So
sure, we can wait. I like to equate it to like the movie series, right? Like, I'm a big fan of the Alien quadrilogy or septilogy or whatever we're at now, and then adding in on TV shows. So like, I want to be invested in this series, and yeah, you're right. Do I have 710 hours?
No. Who does?
No one.
But you know what? Let's Metal Gear Solid it then, right? And let's just go. Let's start with slot 2. We're fighting against, who was it? Ocelot, Raven. What was the guy's name where you had to
Mantis.
Put the Mantis? Right. Yeah, we'll go into port 2 since we'll probably spend more time in Donkey Kong. Yeah. Trails started off as a game called Dragon Slayer, Legend of Heroes, which came out in 1989. And it had a sequel that came out a few years later. I guess they did well enough. I mean, this is a realm of time where like really heavy story intense games were not super common, but I guess when they stuck the landing, they kind of had good word of mouth. So after that, there was 3 games in. They took the tail name of it, so it was Dragon Slayer, Legend of Heroes, and then Dragon Slayer, Legend of Heroes 2. The 3 games that came after that are known as the Legend of Heroes series, but it's referred to as, and I don't know how to pronounce this, so I apologize, but the Gagharv trilogy. I've obviously never played any of them, but the 4th game in that series repurposed the Legend of Heroes and became Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky. And then that kind of started what is referred to now as the Liberal arc, which is like the opening town that you kind of start in. And it just kind of goes from there. I don't have much experience other than playing the original Trails in the Sky on my Steam Deck for a couple hours, and then obviously saying to myself, wow, this is really great. I wish it had some quality of life improvements. And then,
Lo and behold,
at that point was the remake was announced. Like, it was serendipitous that the remake was announced a couple months after, and I was like, I guess I'm just going to wait because this game scratches me right where I itch as far as the art style and everything. So I was like, yeah, I'll just wait. Cool.
Yeah, it's definitely an RPG that, like most games now, you really need to pre-order because there aren't enough copies. And I played the demo, so I'm not as far as Tom is in the actual game because he has a physical copy, and I think he's delved 12 plus hours into it, and I'm only
just about 10, and I only finished the prologue, so I was a little stunned to at the like 9 hour mark go chapter 0 complete, and I was like, oh damn, this game's gonna be long.
And then you have 700 more hours.
You know what? I think if they are refreshing the series and I have a remake or a remaster or, every couple years, like I think, okay, maybe that's palpable. I don't think I'm going to just burn through all these games. And
maybe a little Dragon Quest VII remaster it so that streamline and the whole fan base can be very mad that you're missing key points of collecting liberal news, which when you say it's the liberal arc, like the first thing you're doing is collecting a paper for your father. And I was like, shouldn't we have named this something else? But, I mean, it's video gamers, so no politics.
Well, I mean, I think it is kind of like a slightly politically oriented game, like obviously rooted in fantasy politics, but it seems to be somewhat more grounded in its approach to its story so far than your typical, like, fantasy, like Final Fantasy story. Like obviously there's like creatures and things and potions and whatnot, but like, yeah, like one of the early missions, you end up helping a photographer, like kind of move through this castle so they can get a picture on the top of it for said newspaper. And there's some like government conspiracy stuff, and I can only fathom where the story's going. So it is kind of tropey in the sense that it does open up with kind of an annoying character that over time you get used to, but like discovers or gets someone brought into their family that of course has amnesia and they forget some things, and right, so you kind of like foster them, and now that you're their sibling, but at the same time I don't know if there's some like romance building there. It's kind of unclear at this point, but it's a little strange. So I don't know, I think its groundedness is actually kind of makes the story more relevant today as our political landscape is kind of fucked up, for lack of a better explanation.
That's true. Is Estelle the annoying character?
Yeah, the American voice actor, I don't know who did it, I didn't jot it down here in my notes, can get a little whiny at times, and I think that is the character's notion, to kind of be a little like uppity in some regards, but like also has those moments of like balancing out with kind of being tough and willing to like push herself to help others. And so it the character itself is kind of tropey, but you kind of have to work past the dialogue or the voice performance, I should say.
Yeah. So playing the demo, what's the boy's name? I know Estelle's the girl. What's the boy?
Of course, I'm drawing a blank right now.
Of course.
Of course I am. Estelle and I don't know, Dave.
Sure. Well, playing the demo, I definitely...
It's not Dave, by the way.
The main character, Estelle, is very reminiscent of Chrono Cross's kid character. And I'm playing as this girl, and I'm like, why is this character exactly someone I've played before? Have you ever played Chrono Cross?
I've played Chrono Trigger, but not Chrono Cross. That was on the PlayStation, the original PlayStation, right?
Yeah, it bridged the gap. People don't think it's a spiritual successor, right? But like, there's a whole new system when it comes to your moves and all. But there was something like 30 plus characters.
Joshua, that's his name.
Yeah, how could we forget Joshua? But look up a picture of Kid from Chrono Cross. It is the exact same character with a longer jacket, with the same top, with the same shorts.
Oh, holy shit. Yeah, that is straight up almost the same looking character, minus maybe the crop top. Kid's crop top looks to be a little bit more promiscuous than Estelle's does.
Yeah, and the hairstyle's a little different, but I was like, why are we already playing as the same character as we played 30 years ago, 20 years ago?
There you go.
The other thing I really enjoyed is that the system that you put your, remind me, what are they called? That you attune.
The orbs, the orbital thing.
The orbaments. You equip certain abilities based off of what you craft. And the beginning of the game, normally whenever you're playing any RPG, the normal weakness is like fire or ice. And the first dungeon, all of the enemies actually are weakness are wind or earth. And I was kind of like shocked because I was like, this is not a normal RPG when it comes to weaknesses and how to play the game. It was very interesting to me that they wouldn't go the normal route that everyone else goes. I don't know if you noticed that.
Well, the one thing I noticed with the weaknesses is that there was no, and I think I'm used to this as of late with games like even Clair Obscur and Persona was the first one that I really started to lean into this as far as a style is like you have to discover the weaknesses first. And so the first time you meet an enemy, there was always like a trial and error of, okay, what are they going to be weak to? And sometimes it might have been obvious if you're like, oh, it's a character that's on fire. Let's throw a water attack at them. And logic would usually like piece that together for you and you can do well. But this game was like right out of the gate, like, hey, these enemies, it shows you are weak to fire. Use your fire attack. And I found that actually kind of helpful. I don't think it ruins any of the fun because obviously while you can change your orbments and stuff and over the course of the game kind of slot in maybe different things based on where you're at, you may find yourself at a disadvantage or advantage based on what you have leveled up so far. So it kind of does force you to change a little bit how you play. And I think that is a really cool approach to game design, not in, hey, we're going to like, if you don't have the ability and this enemy is weak to that, you kind of have to really muscle it out. It's kind of nice that you can at a glance know this is what I have to use, and if I haven't used it up to this point, it's going to be a little underpowered. And so I think that helps with some of the challenge in that it doesn't feel like it's an unearned challenge. It feels like you got to kind of be on your toes a little bit, and I like that level of involvement without being too overbearing. You know, you're not swapping it out between every encounter. It's just one area or dungeon might have characters weak to a common element, and that was just kind of nice to know. Hey, I'm entering this tower. If I have these things equipped, I'm going to be good for a while. But when I hit a new area, I might have to mix up my play style a little bit. And I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I feel like Atlas does a good job with the personas. And did they do Metaphor?
They did,
okay.
Yes.
When it comes to weaknesses and discovering them for yourself. And then I still go back to the old days of writing down a character and their weakness because it doesn't always equate to like you looking at a bestiary at any moment to figure out what their weakness is. So that old school mentality of like, I need to jot down notes on a game.
Remember when the instruction manuals had pages at the back for notes?
Oh, yeah.
Or like passwords or like cheat codes or something? There'd be like, a couple pages in there writing down that Konami code.
So they do a good job of, there is a bestiary, and I also like that they really utilize the controller to its full extent. Like, your R menu, all your A, X, B, and Y have an additional menu that you have to kind of remember, which can be frustrating if you don't know which one is the orbiment or which one is bestiary or which one is your quests. But for the most part, like it is really utilizing for an RPG all of the buttons to make sure that no one goes unnoticed, right?
Yeah, I felt it was pretty intuitive as far as it was set up, and it doesn't feel like the menus are cumbersome, which is exactly what you want in an RPG where you've got to manage a lot of menus, and even though it balances technically two different combat styles, both real-time and you can flip into turn-based, it kind of does it pretty seamlessly, and that just makes it a little bit more engaging. I do find that I just hit like my second major area, and I am woefully underleveled because it does throw a lot of enemies on the map. There's no random encounters, but you can very easily like run past a lot of enemies and not fight them, which is what I want to do when I want to move the story forward and not go to an area, fight a bunch of enemies, collect an item, and then have to backpedal through that entire area again, only to basically do the same fights. I find that a little tedious. So I'm paying for it now. But I just did what I normally do and bumped that difficulty down to easy and just making more ground that way.
It's crazy how many games nowadays have that story mode that make it a little bit easier so that you can just enjoy the story. I know there are times where we don't have time to play games, so that I'm just watching some person play through the game so that I can see the story as well.
But I think it was on story mode, and I do want the satisfaction of actually like playing the game, and it's kind of nice that that's an option that you can then also adjust at any point in time, right? The one thing I always do at any RPG is if I choose my difficulty at the beginning, I will look up, will I be able to change this later if I want to? And 9 times out of 10 now, that is a pretty reasonable accessibility option to have in there, and I just appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, going back to, you said clear obscure, like, I was mad that there were 2 bosses that I had to turn in the story mode, and then the rest of the game was cake. But there are times where you might be woefully underleveled, or it might all be a parry system that you have to time exactly 100 hits before you can react. But in this one, I wanted to ask you, how do you know when to choose real-time combat versus turn-based?
So typically if you find that the quick attacks are doing enough damage that you can kind of plow through some enemies without like really just button mashing for an extended period of time, it probably means that you're over leveled enough to kind of just breeze through them. And I won't shift into the turn-based combat. Eventually some enemies will go up, you're stronger than I am, and kind of like work themselves away from you. But the other thing is that anytime you fight a normal enemy, say you're evenly matched, when you do your quick attacks, when you stun them and then immediately hit the Y button to pivot into your turn-based combat, it will give you an advantage in that you will, I think, 100% strike first. And because their real-time combat system is a little different in that some moves require the equivalent of 2 moves, like you have to select a special, and it may need to charge depending on the traits of the enemies. So you might find that you set an attack, the enemies attack, and then you actually do your attack depending on what it is you selected. Which is a cool system because it does kind of make you strategize a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like in today, you really have to engage the player more than turn-based, right? To keep intention. Again, you're playing a, what is it, probably 80 hours to completion game. And there are times where if you don't have real-time combat, things could probably get a little bit slow. I mean, you played through Dragon Quest III. Luckily, it was only like a 30-hour game, but it was all turn-based.
Yeah, luckily.
Right? And you finished.
Yeah, and it would have taken longer if it also was not in easy mode, because easy mode does not let you die when you fight your enemies.
Oh, you were playing on easy?
I did, yeah. And I thought I was getting lucky for the first few times because it will keep you at 1 HP. And I was like, oh man, I'm really doing well at 1 HP. Like I'm skating by. And then I read that, nope, it just makes it so you can never die.
All right.
So
we had vastly different experiences because I played on normal. And
I don't know how you beat that game. And I don't know how anyone beat that game 35, 40 years ago, because that final gauntlet is insane.
Brutal. Yeah, the last thing I just wanted to say was you're right about the menus. I feel like with RPGs now, there are too many menus. And it just gets cumbersome to the point of exhaustion, where I don't want to play the game because it takes so long to load a menu and find what I need to do.
Yeah, I think my only big UI gripe in this game is that when you go to the full screen map, it defaults zoomed in pretty heavily, and the marker that you're trying to get to is like never within eye shot. So like you're initial, like, all right, I got to bring up the map, but then I immediately need to zoom out, which I know is a small gripe, but like that's one of those things where like I wish I could just pull it all the way out and then zoom in where
it's not a small gripe. I was playing Silent Hill F, and the map where I had to go was off the map. It didn't even show me like where it was. I had to like scroll into this nothingness to figure out, oh, I gotta go to the top right corner which I'd never been anywhere remotely close to it, which is baffling.
Right.
So yeah. Slot 2.
Full.
Would you recommend it, right?
Yeah, I think if you are like into games with this kind of like anime art style, I know that can be a turnoff for some people. It is generally speaking pretty wholesome, but it's had some moments where I was just like, oh, okay, like they're not afraid to bring some things up. I'm very curious to see where the story goes when it gets more serious. And I don't want to give anything in the way in the realm of spoilers. But like given from what I've seen of trailers in later games of the series, it does look like this game actually gets pretty dark and intense. And so for it to kind of start on this lighthearted note, I think it's a really easy entry point to get into it. And if it hooks you, cool. I think you'll know pretty early on if you're into it or not. I will say it has a slow start. So like there are long conversation scenes or move the character to this building and then you got to talk for 5 minutes. Like there are things like that you would expect at the start of a game, but because it's an 80-hour game, you might actually go like 5 or 6 hours where, yeah, you've got some missions and stuff under your belt, but there was a lot of exposition and character development and plot or setting, establishing and things like that. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it, especially if you got time in your calendar to make way for it. And look, if you fall in love with it, you know that there's a whole series behind it that is pretty well thought out and very well regarded.
Well, that's it for Trails in the Sky first chapter. The first chapter of many that I hope to finally get into, which has scratched our beloved RPG genre itch for this month, and has filled our storage for Memory Card 1.